listening to Keeping It Real with Janine, your guide to living an authentic, healthy life podcast. I'm your host, Janine Strong, and today I'm having a super inspiring conversation with Karen Sperling. Karen has been blessed to have a very interesting life, and she has been using her gifts to help as many people as she possibly can in very creative ways. Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I would like to read a quote before we go on from you, that's from you, because I think it really exemplifies who you are, and then we will continue. When people comment that I do so much, which I don't feel I do, I always say, just do something, sometime. For 30 years, I have belonged to a service ashram that takes care of hungry people in the streets, people with AIDS and addictions. I learned from that community to be present in the streets, hospitals and hospices, and to make food and feed people. Over the years, I have monthly, weekly, or daily made meals and walked the streets in Venice Beach Boardwalk, which is in California, having the privilege of talking to homeless people, learning from them, and loving them. I took in 5 African American children whose mother died of AIDS and have been their caregiver, support, and comfort zone for the past 25 years. Karen's also had a successful career as a writer. She was the first woman in this country to write, produce, and direct feature films, and the first to hire an all-woman crew in 1973. She has written screenplays, novels published by Doubleday, a Broadway musical, and the first woman to run for president of the U.S. A Broadway musical about the first woman to run for president of the U.S. And she also has a series of interactive children's books. Wow, and we haven't even gotten to her transformational work yet. I'm honored to have you on my podcast. Thank you.
No, I'm so proud of you for doing all of this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Now I know you've had an unusual upbringing, and I definitely want to focus mostly on your work, but it would be fun to just hear a little bit about how you grew up, because like I said, I know it's an unusual upbringing for most people.
Well, I think what better way to get into the world of consciousness transformation coming from the Hollywood family that built the dream factory. My grandfather was one of the Warner Brothers, and they were, of course, one, socially conscious, and 2, the first to put sound on film, and very, very creative in what they did and how they wanted to educate and entertain people. Yeah, so I'm proud of them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone, well, maybe kids now, but most everybody, when you say Warner Brothers, they recognize that as a cornerstone of the film industry.
Yes, yeah. Well, my dad was also a filmmaker, and my uncle, and I guess I wanted to be a good son at some point because then I started making films. And being a woman in the early 70s and doing that was pretty odd and tough.
Yeah.
But I really loved doing it, and I loved hiring the women because it was the women's movement at the time, and I was the only executive in the business. And I felt like not only creative, like the film needed an all-woman set to make it a kind of sterilized set for what the theme of the movie was. So it was a creative decision too.
What is the movie?
That movie was called The Waiting Room.
The Waiting Room.
The first one I did was called Make a Face. In those days, I produced, I wrote, I directed. Everybody said, "Oh, you want to be an actress?"
Why not?
So I'm not sure how they got. Yeah, well, no. But anyway, so I jumped, leaped, and dove into that as my first career, and I moved on.
And what did you move on to?
Then I became a patient advocate, and I married a surgeon who created a learning treatment and support center for women with breast cancer. So I became a patient advocate, and we wrote several novels together that were about conspiracy of silence in the medical profession, and also the emotional experience of being a woman who would lose her breast and what that meant to her identity. And it was nice. It was nice to work together, and those books were published. And then I wrote another. Then I kept writing, and I wrote more movies and things like that. And then we started with all the kids. I always wanted to adopt kids, so we adopted 2, and then I had one. And then after we were separated, I took in 5 children, 5 African American children. Yeah.
Wow, that's a big undertaking for a single woman.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't seem to think it out much. I just do what I go. I want this experience, and boy, did I get it. Yeah. But so the contrast of I did come from being considered, an heiress to a Hollywood family experience, and I did, experience Hollywood to some extent, though my mom was very politically and socially active and did not want us to consider ourselves royalty of any kind. So she was an artist. So we were not really given that identity, although other people put that on you when you come from that background.
Sure.
But I've finally got to the point where it was interesting for other people, and I had experiences that, I know you said you wanted to hear a story. I would run down the street and into Dean Martin's house, and the Rat Pack would be sitting there. Excuse me, I can't remember which daughter I played with, but too bad it wasn't Dean. He was very cute, the young Dean. But Gail, I was Gail. Anyways, and that was a neighborhood. Across the street was Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher until he went over to Liz. And, so it was kind of peripherally, of course, a part of my life to some extent. And I worked on the studio lot and rode Clint Walker's horse around the lot, and so I know it was special. And it was my grandfather, my uncle made The Wizard of Oz, and my dad made 50
Wow, there's
films.
a classic.
Yeah. So that was a piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
So how do you think that's shaped you in the work that you do now?
That's a good. Well, like I said, that there is where people went to live in other worlds, really, and to create in time, spliced together in space, stories, and to create magic. I mean, that's and inform people. So I think, if you kind of slip and slide through the value of movies and the value of communicating, in that reality, a dream fact reality, I went to the next arena, consciousness reality, which you can't see, can't touch, but you sure can play with it. And I think when I finally landed after years at the Monroe Institute and working with other, teachers and things, and I worked at the American Society for Psychical Research in the late 60s doing research. It was always of interest to me that we had capacities that we weren't using. And so I think once I got to matrix energetics, which is where I met you, was just this divine form of lightness and allowing and creating and changing all the time. And I think Richard Bartlett was an amazing gatherer of information. And also, I think when I was on staff there, and I had a nice relationship in terms of being able to play with Richard and the other staff and stuff constantly, and be with hundreds of people in that field, for 6.5 years. There's where I just let go of everything, dissolved into everything, and played with everything. And it was so wonderfully playful. and create, and not believing in one thing. It's not like you have to do this, this, and this to get this, this, and this result. It
Right.
was kind of like, wait for it, notice
Mm-hmm.
it, trust it, don't judge it. How is it useful? And you go. And there's the information. And it's a resonant field with the other person once you're in that expanded state.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, you could be in that expanded state in that, morphic field that was created by Richard and by Matrix. And I loved it and appreciated it. It was a wonderful sound.
Well, I always found it so amazing how, because Stephen and I went to umpteen, seminars, and at the time there was what, level 1, 2, and 3. So you're going over and over again to quote unquote the same seminars, but they were always different. It was never the same.
Yeah.
It was always evolving as Richard was evolving, and it was always such a wonderful state of possibility and play and learning, and it just seemed like we were all evolving, along with Richard and along with Matrix.
Yeah, and he the clown, the fool, the one who's at 0 point, you know, the fool is represented by the zero, and that's where everything starts and everything ends. And so there was this wonderful. The first time I saw him, I thought, this man does not care what anybody thinks. He is totally irreverent, and I love irreverence.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite people to just kind of have good company with is Osho, Rajneesh.
Mm-hmm.
He is completely irreverent and doesn't want anyone following him but just he has gathered so much information. So for me, I just looked at Rich and said, okay, this is all play. This is all to be amused, but with such a divine purpose to be useful to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's my mantra. I want to be useful and still be amused and be playful and stay in that light state. And I was one of the people who just plain dissolved in an instant, right at the right in the lobby, or in the market or on the playground or in the airport. I was down on the ground giggling.
I know.
So
you could shift so fast. I know. I remember many times just seeing you like drop out of reality and into wherever it was you were going.
Yeah, that's that non-physical state where everything's available.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and my what I eventually did as a kind of my little seminars in the afternoons was know nothing, access everything.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. What do you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's important.
Well, it's just once I've gotten to the point, I have totally distilled everything down to something extremely simple. I stand next to somebody and they start to feel like they're woozy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that means they're noticing they're the field. To me, the field is where we play, where we are, who we are, what we are. We're not a physical body. And
Right.
so once you feel that lightness of being and that at ease state, everything's accessible. And then you kind of just have to notice. See, I don't believe in anything. I don't look for reincarnation, auras, whatever else you get, the chakras. Everybody goes, can you see this? I said, I don't know. I don't know nothing until I'm blended in that blended field with you. And then information shows up, and I trust it because no matter how weird it is, I trust it because it's something that resonates. It's the stories or the information. It can be sometimes another lifetime. It can be a holographic image. It can be, but not looking for that.
You're not expecting anything.
No, and I love, and the weirder it is, sometimes the better. And I have worked with thousands of people. I've never said, and I've said some very strange things to people. I've never had anybody go look at me cross-eyed and say, I don't know what you're talking about. They all go, uh-huh, how'd you know that? And I go, because you just told me. So it's a very, I've now also gotten to where I call it good listening.
Okay.
And I've done different workshops. I've done how to hear hidden voices, how to be the Buddha in you. I'm going to do one in September. I have a wonderful place that people give me to do this work, and
Oh,
it's
nice.
called Making Moments Magic.
Mm.
And it's just that it keeps evolving. Every time I do a workshop, I go, that's it. I've got it. This is what I'm going to share. I don't like to say I'm teaching. This is what I'm going to share. And about 2 hours later, I go, nope. I have to figure it out again. So that's the fun part. You keep moving and keep opening up, and other stuff comes in. So to me, it's just being in that state at ease.
Mm-hmm.
And your mind, if your mind is talking to you, I just say I hear you. But usually mine just shuts up, and then I wait for it, and something shows up. It can be. Everybody says, "Well, are you psychic, clairvoyant, clairaudient?" I go, "Yes, and so are you."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're just in touch with it.
Yeah, I'm just playing with it.
Mm-hmm.
I invite, come on down. So I think that's the easiest way, and I'm not attached to the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I can
That's
get people
important.
with cancer, anxiety, needs, whatever. They'll come in with cancer and say, "What are you going to do for me?" And I'll go, "I don't know." And I
Mm-hmm.
am so comfortable with that
Mm-hmm.
they get comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Actually, usually start laughing after I say that. But it doesn't mean I don't care, but I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what's going to happen or how this is going to work for you or what we're going to do about it, because if I'm in the problem set with you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the problem set with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have people say, "Oh, I have this going on here in my back." And I go, "But it's not there, it's in your shoulders." Because I just go where my attention's drawn.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mess with it. I mess with where my attention's drawn, and the shift comes to where they have concerns. For me, it's one of the best outcomes if I never see that person again.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great maybe for a practice, but it's great for what my intention is, which is if someone comes in with something that they're concerned about, I say, "What would you like to attend to?" I don't say, "What's the problem?"
Okay.
And I had a cousin, he got nauseous when he goes fishing. He had to go fishing with his son. So I don't know what I did, whatever came up and messed with him, and he left. And about 3 months later, he said, "I'm going fishing with my son." I said, "Oh, well, how's the nausea?" He said, "Huh?" I said, "You got nauseous. Remember when you came to my house and we did that?" "We did. Oh, my God. I don't hit ever since." And I go, perfect outcome. And
Perfect.
that happens to me all the time. I run into people I've been with and I've messed with or I played with, and they go, "Oh, my God, that went away," or whatever that was. And I don't even remember being there. And so they sometimes say, "Can I come back for this?" I go, "Absolutely not. You can come back to anchor something or do something else. But if I tell you to come back because you're in pain, what are you going to do? Keep your pain."
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's,
Isn't it fascinating how when something, let's just say, goes away, a pain or whatever, and you just forget about it. Totally forget until somebody brings it up or something happens, and it's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot all about that. That went away."
yeah, I think the other thing you have to be careful of sometimes because people want to keep stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's a secondary gain.
But yeah, it keeps their conversation going. It keeps their concerns going. It keeps them, it's almost like you can't take away the meal and not have something else to feed them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to work with people a little bit on what are you going to, fill this space with now. Some people just, are fine, they go on. But the other thing is, like, I had a guy with really bad back pain, suicidal, and we worked on it or with it or played with it, and he left, and about 3 weeks later I said, "By the way, notice the pain. and notice what's different.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 weeks later, he called. He said, pain's the same, and I feel lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And the "and I feel lighter" he moved into.
Mm-hmm.
So within a certain period of time, his back pain was gone. A lot of other things that were just bothering him also. His business had gone under. His business was back, etc. So he moved into what was different.
And that's
not
important.
stuck. Yeah, that was a good way to go.
Mm-hmm. Because I think we have a tendency to focus on what's the same instead of what is different, what has changed.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so here's another story. For example, I had a woman who comes to me with cancer, and she says, I'm doing everything for my health.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cooking for my health. I'm doing exercise for my health. And I said, no, you're doing it for your cancer.
Mm.
And she said, what do you mean? I said, if you had said to me, I'm doing these exercises and my body can do things I didn't think it could do, and I'm cooking and finding these wonderful ways of eating that I'm really enjoying, it's not related. Once you do the polarity, for my health, for my cancer is right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage, just like those wonderful things about open-ended questions, I always encourage people's language to shift to how they're experiencing something, so that they're experiencing it in a much more possible way. There's more potential available when you say, okay, with money. Somebody says, I want money. Okay, that means I don't have money. So I go, what would it be like if you had the support you need? Now, support has a whole much broader range.
Absolutely.
So that's another kind of stylistic way of moving through things. But I have to say, over these years, it's getting simpler and simpler and simpler. It's getting so simple, it's almost like just being present. Once people feel this, and I work in the streets, I work in the markets, I work at wherever if I go to a physical therapist, I mention what I do, and they get into it. I just, wherever I am, if I can, put my little hands out and go, woo, that I'm happy. So, and people ask me, when I go to meetings or I go to other places. And then the other way and I do it in the streets, as I said, when I go to feed people and stuff, sometimes we talk about it. And they get that feeling where they're just a little lighter and there's more access when you're in that state. I've also, I offer nonprofits, like I worked with the ACLU and Code Pink, and I'm working with Tree People and their staff. I want to give back to the staff now. I mean, this is such a difficult time for all the people who help others. And so I go and meet with the staff individually, and basically I do is sit down and say, what's up? And they start talking, because I'm listening. And we move through something that's concerning them or they want to shift, and then I just do some of this kind of stepping into what it feels like to be in that shift. So that's kind of how it goes. I can work for 5 minutes with somebody, 15 minutes, or an hour. It doesn't matter, whatever they need. And I don't charge because I can't. I don't know. I'm okay. I can pay my rent and feed myself and help all my kids. So until it's imposing on my own well-being, I don't charge for any of it.
The sense that I get is that you have kind of evolved into being a walking transformation.
Shine a light.
I have this picture right now of you sort of like this little tornado that walks around disrupting people's lives in a good way. At helping them to open and access new possibilities and just get a different perspective and get out of their box.
Well, get out of their way is always that wonderful phrase. I love that, get out of your way. And it's
Mhm.
and when it's not, I've learned from the kids, and all of their difficulties, that it's not about me.
Mhm. Mhm.
So with, I've lost a child, two children. Um, Others have been, you know, doing drugs and alcohol and had a lot of problems because they were quote unquote at risk kids,
Mhm.
having babies with baby daddies and all this experience that again was not from my background but something I moved into. It's not about me. So anything I know because I'm not doing anything when I'm with people, but it's this blended field, and so it's between us, and I feel that they're doing as much as I'm doing to shift something.
Mhm.
I'm kind of, when I'm in that wave feeling,
Mhm.
it's kind of matching the oscillations, the oscillating universe. It's like I'm just in the wave there, and so I'm participating and I'm getting help.
Mhm. So, do you feel like when you're with someone, you're like you're oh, what's the way to say it? Maybe you're matching their energy to start to connect with them, and then you're shifting that or raising that frequency or
I
is
don't
that
I don't think so.
no? Okay.
I think no, I think all I'm doing is stepping. I'm in this. I hold the field maybe a little more aware because I've done it more.
Mhm.
So as soon as I'm next to somebody, they feel that, and
Mhm.
they just feel more at ease, and they get lighter.
Mhm.
And so I don't talk about energy anymore, or I don't know what I mean. I've studied a lot. I love studying, physics and all these things, and I can't probably don't understand most of what I'm reading, but I know I'm downloading that stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I've studied stuff that reveals the reality of this, although that's changing too. It's
Mhm.
true until they find the next
Right.
reality. So to me, it's just a sensibility that you hold, um, and of who we are, which is not a physical body per se, but this kind of more wave-like beingness that's a state of ease that keeps you in a kind of dissolved, expanding, transparent state. So you're available, you're neutral, and then that person feels their neutrality in that space and expanded availability to get information or to notice something change.
So, I think what I'm hearing you say is that being able to be in that place of neutrality offers an ability to have more access to everything.
Yeah,
Not being stuck in black or white or one emotion or another.
yeah. Some people complain about using the term neutral because they want to experience life. They don't want to be left. That they're having an emotional challenge. There's no
Mhm.
denying, grief or pain, or you don't have. I don't say let's move out of that. I say, well, let's maybe experience this a little differently, or move through it differently, or have it move through you.
Mhm.
But having lost a child, for example, that sucked and it hurt and it was hard, and I remember going through that. Um, so so I don't take people and say, okay, let's stop this,
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
this real emotion or this real feeling and go into neutral. Let's just notice what it feels like to be more at ease and let it move through you a little more easily. For example, like what about the medical profession? So I have people come, as I said, who might want to do chemotherapy. They're going to do
Mhm.
chemotherapy. Well, I don't go, oh, no, don't do chemotherapy. We'll just shift your energy and you'll be fine.
Mhm.
I wait to notice what works for them. I mean, I had a friend who was going to do chemotherapy. She was lying in bed, and like I said, it's very playful. You do what shows up, and I was standing there and I got no chemotherapy for her. And I went to her, and she went, "Oh, Karen, you're so crazy." And I said, "You know what? No chemo." And she called me 3 days later. She said she forgot her chemo appointment. It's on her calendar. She called the doctor. The doctor said, "I've reevaluated you. You don't need chemo."
Oh, wow. Wow.
Okay. Now, that's just the way it played out.
Mm-hmm.
Another client would come and I would say, "All right, let's chemo's on I feel it, I get it, it's there, or whatever, it's for you, whatever. It's Let's do it a little differently. Let's see how we can move through it and experience it a little differently."
Mm-hmm. You know what comes to me when you're talking about it, it's not about not feeling the emotion, but about not getting hooked. Allowing the whatever the emotion is or what you're going through to be okay, but without that hook that gets you stuck in it.
Or tosses you around. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to, have the experience. I mean, we came here for the pinch. We didn't come here to be angels. We've been angels. So, that state, this reality check down here is the human experience. you know.
Quite the
Um,
reality check.
yeah, quite the reality check, never ending. So, like I said, I don't want to be there saying, "Oh, well, let's just get into this blissful state and you'll be fine."
Mm-hmm.
It's just being in whatever it is. It's so different every time. I can't make rules because every single time is different. Every person's different. Everything they're going through is different. I have never done the same thing twice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
So
I
you're responding to what comes up.
Yeah, whatever shows up, I'm going to trust it and play with it and ask how it can be useful.
Hmm.
I mean, I've seen things. I do sometimes I say, "Well, I'm going to look at your hologram." I try to base it in things. When I have to do exercises in my workshops, I have to make this stuff up, so they can experience it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I do notice images or something can show up. I don't see it, but I get the information
Mm-hmm.
and I relate it to the person, and it's always something that seems to resonate with who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and how they might be moving through something. Um, one time and when the beginning, this woman was selling a house and she was sitting in the house, and I went up to her and I said, "You look unhappy. What's going on?" She said, "Oh, my boyfriend just trashed me." I said, "Well, I do something. Would you like to look at it with me or whatever? Can I mess with you?" And I saw off to the side this Indian woman who had a blanket and she wanted to wrap up her instruments and come into this woman's heart. And I asked her if that was okay. So there was one time I got like image to do. So she called me the next day and she said, "Oh my God, I am the woman I've always wanted to be." And totally dropped this feeling of this man trashed me. Well, that was nice. I appreciated she let me know because sometimes people don't let me know. I would say 6 years, 7 years, 8 years later, I was in the neighborhood and I was going to rent a house, and it turned out to be her house. Well, it also turned out over those 7 years, I was playing the drums and the flute.
Mm-hmm.
And she opened the door and I looked at her. I said, "Oh my God, do you remember the Indian woman who wrapped up her flutes and drums and wanted to come into your heart years ago?" She said, "Oh my God, yes." I said, "Well, now I want to come into your home with my drums and my flute."
Mm.
And I got
Gives
the
me the
house.
goosebumps.
But there's so much beauty in the stories, Stuff like that happens all the time. And then of course, because I've lost a child, and there's been a world of communication, with her and her way. For example, I ended up playing music on the boardwalk in Venice, which is something she wanted to do. So her spirit kind of jumped into me. I don't know how in my 60s, early 70s, I ended up on the boardwalk with a drumming band playing music. It was just
Oh my goodness.
crazy. So that was my Sarah kind of guiding me to have her life too. And
Mhm.
there's many, many other stories of her showing up and stuff.
Oh, neat.
So yeah, so it's nice. It's nice to you don't have to believe in these things, but you certainly can enjoy them,
Mhm.
appreciate them,
Mhm.
and participate in them and have them fuel you and nourish you.
Well, you know what came to me is life is magical if you just allow it. It's like it's
And
there,
notice
the
it if you
magic,
notice
right?
it.
Allow it and notice it, right? Because it's there. It's just if we're, and I'm just as much to blame as anybody else, if we're stuck in our quote unquote stuff, we we tend to miss the magic in life.
Yeah, I was really good at I used to say I hate my life, I love my days. And
I hate
I,
my life. I love my days. I kind of like that. That's
yeah, it was great because it was, there was just stuff not, I must say, I have had the real world stuff not work.
Mhm.
The kids are a mess, the career didn't quite go where it should, the man didn't show up, blah, blah, blah. And I love my life,
Mhm.
my days. So I kind of kept that flow or whatever going most of the time. Now I got hit recently and with a new phase, and you go, "Uh-oh, what happened to that? Oh, I'm good at this. Life is just fine. I appreciate everything." I go back to the practice, and the practice is not gratitude, which I think is a bit of much work.
Mhm.
Just to open the fridge and say, "Wow, food, nice," or "Oh, I saw a pretty flower out there." It's kind of just moments. It's just now threading back the moments like pearls in the day
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
appreciating them.
I know sometimes I have to deliberately do that to be appreciative, of little things that,
Yeah.
that I need to be appreciative of that I have that just because some things aren't going well or I'm upset about or whatever, it really does help to turn your thoughts, your beingness to what it is you appreciate or have gratitude for, however you want to say it.
It's also, there's another one I love, which is attitude.
Hmm.
And I've noticed, I like this whole summer, I was doing a lot of things for my children and grandchildren, you know, all of them,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
spending money like crazy. And I loved it. I loved it. I'm going, oh my God, I'm just going on. Okay, but this is so fun, and I want to do this for them. I want them to have this. Well, at the end of the summer, I sold something I wasn't expecting to sell, and it covered all the costs. Cause, and I felt that from the beginning. There's not a feeling of, oh, I'm going to get this back. It's a feeling of, this is okay. I
Hmm.
can do this, and not going to worry. And
Interesting.
yeah, it's kind of a comfort zone. You just go in the comfort zone and say, I'm participating in this, and this works,
Hmm.
and it'll work for me too.
Hmm. So, how can people, what can people do on a practical level to to do their best to be more in this kind of a state that you're talking about that would really help them to be more peaceful and more at ease, and there's so much chaos, and it just seems like it seems to me like change is speeding up. It certainly seems to me like time is speeding up. There's just I don't know where the days
Hmm.
go. It's like, whoa, well, there's the day. That one's gone, and I've gotten
Yeah,
how many things on my list done. Um
yeah.
and just to kind of not be in that sense of frustration or that sense of needing to be at a fast pace all the time and
So I have one little exercise that I always mention to people, and a lot of people have said it works even when I'm in bed asleep at night and wake up in the middle of the night. All I say is stand up, notice what it feels like, take a step, notice what's different.
hmm Now that's really being present. So say
That's
that
it.
again. Stand up.
Stand up. Notice what it feels like.
Okay. And how about everybody who's listening, just take a moment and do that. Let's use this as a little exercise.
Yeah.
And even if, well, I guess you do have to stand if you want to actually
It's
take a
good to
step.
stand only because then you can kind of have that co-connection from above, so below, and
Mm-hmm.
you're the balance in between, and it's just I just think you can feel it more. If you
Mm-hmm.
can't stand up because you can't stand up, then sit,
Mm-hmm.
and then roll your chair to another spot.
Right. Well, that's what I was thinking. That the obvious, also the obvious plus of standing is that you can actually move your feet and take a step.
Yes,
Okay.
and then you take a step and notice what's different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you keep doing that, taking more steps, or just one?
If you want to, you can, but you could just do it as a little. It's just a breath away. Change is one breath away. I always say to people, "How long does it take to die?" And they go, "Well, you get sick." Yeah, nope. How long does it take to die?
Yep. Yep.
It's one breath away. Change is one breath away. Shifting is one breath away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one step away from just being in a different moment.
And I think that's a really powerful statement because I think there's a tendency to think of, change as, to change anything, to be in it's like a big, huge drama. It's a, big, huge process.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't have to be, obviously, from what you're saying.
No, I mean we're used to that. It gives us more conversation and
Hmm.
work. So, the present, the only time there is no time is in the present, and that's the space in between. And when you can play or live in that space in between, that's where the flow is. It's like if you look at a river, there's the past side and the future side, and in between is the present, and
Hmm.
that's moving all the time. It's moving all the time, and being comfortable with the change and the movement, and stepping into that, and that's where everything I feel is, happening kind of and flowing.
Hmm.
So so and feeling comfortable in that at a state, or feeling comfortable in that flowing state. That's why I said I had so much practice being the wave. It's like
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm oscillating like the universe is oscillating, and dissolving and reappearing is, and people have said sometimes they see me disappear and reappear. So I used to say also, because I know we talked about it a long time ago, but everybody's always wanting to levitate, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and because that's a big magical moment where you're no longer on gravity, et cetera. And I would always think about the guys, the scientists and everybody being together. And I said, well, when you dissolve like you do when you're a wave and you kind of just float to the floor, you're levitating down.
Interesting. That messes with your mind.
Yes, I love that. And the other thing is you have to trust, and I don't mean trust like as a rule of thumb, but I have done things. There was a time when I was working at Matrix, I used to hit people.
Mm-hmm.
It just would show up, shove them, hit them. I loved it. Um, it was it was something that showed up, and I trusted it. And because I trusted it, Richard sometimes called me the hitting saint. Um, it was it was like it it gave me more trust, because then it nobody ever complained. um,
Mm-hmm.
and no one's ever, as I said, looked cross-eyed at me or complained about what I've said to them. And I've said terrible things to them, like, "Oh, you sound just like your mother, don't you?" Or a young woman came to me and said, "Oh my God, everybody's been so wonderful. I mean, my family, the doctors, about my cancer. It's just been so wonderful to me." I said, "Oh, and so you just wanted a big C for them?" And she said, "What?" And I said, bend over. And I had her bend over into a C. And I held on to her for a few minutes. She came back up. She says, I'm not having cancer for everybody.
Wow. Good job.
Yeah, but those are the kind of things that happen that are so weird. How could you say that to me? She's going, oh, I'm very just being so loving and kind. I'm going, uh-huh. So you're just going to be the big C for them, huh? That's irreverence.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that irreverence pays off.
Yeah, and that's trusting that what is coming to you is authentic and true.
Yeah, a lot of people. It's not. I don't want to say it's not coming from me. It is coming from me, but it's coming with me through me,
Through you.
and
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So it's so much fun to have that information clarity and to
Mm-hmm.
share it and to have it resonate with that person,
Mm-hmm.
and it does.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this brings back a memory of when when I was regularly going to matrix seminars, because when you're regularly in the field and playing with all of this, it I feel like I've kind of lost it over the years, but I remember times, at least 3 times, just sitting across from different people, and all of a sudden they'd have a shift, and something strange would happen to them, and it was just from being in my energy field.
Yeah, that's easy. That's possible all the time, and I'm not any better at it than others. I mean, I've done it a little more, but it's part of them. It's not something I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds to me like you are really, really good at just getting out of yourself and just kind of being a vessel for whatever the universe wants to play with.
Yeah, well, I in partnership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm in partnership with and I love everybody. I mean, because that's a nice thing to say. There's just something about I don't know. There was a guy who's in a group, a wonderful group I work with every week, and he said everybody tells me that I should come to you for help with my pain in my back. He said, but I'm afraid it won't work. And I said, I don't care. And he was like, huh? I said, if I was caring what I did for you, and that I could fix you, and that if it worked, it didn't work, I'd be in it with you. So as time went on, he did not come to me for it, although other people had great results and told him so. I make cake for this group sometimes for people's birthdays,
Mm-hmm.
and he's had the back problems, and his back is getting better after an operation and things, and I make cake for him now. And he calls me Nurse Karen. So, okay, I didn't do my messing with him through these forms, but I made him cake, and it's got the same stuff in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I mean, to me, Karen, you are a gem. You really are. And I've always loved being in your presence, and I'm sure that I speak for probably everyone who has the opportunity to be in your presence, because there is this, you have this gift of being able to somehow, however, who cares, being able to transform people's states into something that is lighter and something that is more uplifting.
I help them notice it.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you have to be in person with someone in order
Uh-uh.
for this to? No.
Nope. I've been working on the phone, on Skype, and, you know, sometimes I'd rather do it on the phone. I don't want anybody watching me because I do other things while I'm talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I'm not focusing on oh yeah, I have all the problems. Okay, let me take notes. Um, I listen though. I'm really the one thing I know I do well is listen.
Mm-hmm.
Listening is so key. Good listening is something I really encourage to people to learn, because and not only just to another person, but to yourself and to other possible realms of information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think stuff comes in. I think we're in a unique time, and it's possible there are, whatever you want to call it, newer dimensions available. Listen, the computer taught us to all this mental exercises, taking layers off. You know, it's like your mind is opening, opening, opening. I'm not sure about the phones for the kids. I think it's overactivating them. I'm a little concerned about kind
Mm-hmm.
of what's happening for kids. It's addictive,
Mm-hmm.
but we sure as heck don't know how to be with our kids now and how to educate them or know what they need. That's another, because of my children's books. You know, I work with a lot of people who are rethinking education and doing beautiful, beautiful things of having sacred circles for kids in schools so that they can learn how to talk to each other and to honor one another. There's a whole, it's nice actually thing actually where the ancestral stuff is needs to be blended back into the contemporary world.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. I
where
agree.
communication is, and the books that I did are total participation. I mean, kids literally read a story, they get to create the character. We have the moment of the story on the page, they complete the pictures on the page. They make a book with me. I created this 25, 30 years ago.
Wow.
You know, where I wanted the kids to, and then they write their name in the book and they write their own story at the end of the book. They make a book with me. I never wanted to just, like, I don't want to teach something.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to have somebody read my story. I want to look at my pretty pictures. I wanted them to become the character, to become the story. You know, to go through the story with the character as themselves,
Mm-hmm.
so that everything's experiential. You know, so that's been my theme. Was my theme with my movies. My movies were experiential. I love Ronald Lang, Artie Lang.
Mm-hmm.
He felt that dreams, fantasy, and reality were equal, and that you went to the person that you were working with, not bring them to you. So that's been my, you know, Steiner,
Mm-hmm.
educational warlord stuff. That's all been my background, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what I love. So experientially, doing it with this work is very similar to what I did. It's allowing and acknowledging and knowing that there are many pieces of a person to share, many parts of their consciousness, and if whatever piece is available or whatever you want to kind of expand into and allow different pieces to show up, you make room for that by being in that expanded state.
Mm-hmm. Your books sound fascinating and really valuable. Is there some way that people can, I mean, are they available or
Yes, they're on. I have a website. They're called Invitational Books.
invitational
Invitationalbooks.com.
books? Okay.
Mhm.
I'll put that on the I'll link on the
Uh,
website too.
yeah. So now that you're giving me an opportunity to hear myself and what I've been doing over the years, that all comes together. Really, it all
Mm-hmm.
has the same. From me to someone else is from me with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And how many books are there?
There's four. Uh, I've completed 12, and four are published.
Okay. Okay. Is there a certain age range for them or?
You know, I would say from about 5 on.
Okay.
You know, so they can play in the book and scribble and write, and you know, I broke all the rules. You don't draw in books and write in
Mm-hmm.
books. Another thing I like doing, breaking rules. I broke rules being the first woman. I broke rules, you know, whatever, communicating with doctors who didn't want anyone communicating with them at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then any of this work is then was I've been doing for 45 years, so always a little ahead here, and these books obviously were too. So I think everybody the stories are complete, and they are transformational stories, and they are literature. It's not the little choo-choo train.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So pretty much any age, and they always have there's a transformation. Characters transform into who they really want to be. So the child or the person going through the story and the adventure also transforms.
Neat. Wow. So invitationalbooks.com. Yeah, I think that sounds like a valuable tool for anyone who has children and is concerned about how they're developing in this chaotic and difficult time.
Yeah, I love a hands-on experience. I kind of, know that might sound old-fashioned, but there's nothing like a child doing something by hand and handing it to somebody and having them look at it and keep it. They're keepsakes. You can have a library of your children's work over. You can do these books when they're 5, when they're 8, when they're 11, and see their progress and their development. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds like a great gift. So going to the website would be to order the books. It's probably doesn't sound like something that would be an ebook that you download or anything like that.
No. I think there's a place where you can order the books from. I think you write info at Invitational Books and it comes to me. I have to put them in the mail.
Great. So very manual.
Yeah.
So if somebody just wanted to go ahead and order the books, they would email you directly?
Well, it'll tell you. It says contact us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for the books, yeah. And then if anybody wants to do a quote-unquote session.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
They can get me at accesschange@gmail.
accesschange@gmail.com. Okay, so that is how to get a hold of Karen Sperling, everyone. accesschange@gmail.com. Great.
Yep.
Karen, this has been very fun. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And as I said, you're a remarkable, amazing being as well, and I really appreciate you and amazed at I knew you when and moved. Heartland girl. I love reading your
blog newsletter.
I just enjoy them so much. I'm right there. You're really good at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I get a little bit of feedback, but not much. So every once in a while, I wonder: is it worth it to do this? Should I be doing this? Does anybody even care?
Oh, I do. When I just feel like I'm right there. I love it.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So if anybody is interested in my blog newsletter, I'll give a little pitch for it right now. It comes out because I upload the podcast every other week. So in between, I do a blog newsletter, and it's kind of an authentic. Sometimes it's what's going on with me. Sometimes it's some ideas that have come into my head or something I've been thinking about, and then I feature whoever my latest guest is, and I pull up from the archives a couple of other guests because people are always joining, as I go along. So I pull up some older conversations, and then I always try to find a good recipe to put in so that make it interesting. So yeah, it's fun to do. I like doing it actually. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that feedback. Thank you. So thank you, Karen. This has been wonderful. I'm really glad to reconnect, and I hope we keep in touch.
Thank you. Of course we will.
Of course. Okay. Take care.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Karen Sperling, for a fun, informative conversation. The podcast website is realjanine.com. You can listen and download episodes. There's links to guest web pages, photos, and you can sign up for the Real Janine bi-weekly newsletter. Remember, Janine is Janean. And if you'd like to subscribe to the podcast, which I hope you might, go to iTunes and type in Keeping It Real with Janine, and it will come up. Also, you may have another favorite podcast provider like Stitcher or Google that you can do it there too. Do you know anyone who would enjoy my conversation with Karen Sperling? I'll bet you do. Please share the love. Thanks for listening. Take care and be well.